We are in not so sunny San Diego. It's been a rainy week or so, but
It held the other day, so it's a little weird here.
yeah, hopefully it'll start clearing up again.
Yeah,
It's weird to have a real winter.
yeah, we're not used to that.
All right, looks like it stopped at 28. All right, I think we can get started. So welcome to our webinar on optimizing your Ezoic account. Today we're going to go over all of the things that we look at as publisher success managers and all the tips and tricks that we give in order to optimize your account. So I am Morgan Alexander and this is Terrence.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And we are both publisher success managers. So looking forward to diving into this with you. As you can see, there is a chat box and there's also a Q&A box. So you're welcome to submit any questions throughout the course of the presentation. And then at the very end, we will have a full Q&A session to address them. All right, so let's get started. So Ezoic is a platform. So we pride ourselves in being an all-in-one platform with a bunch of different technologies offered to you. So more than just ads, we have options to improve site speed, enable privacy settings, including GDPR and CCPA, as well as a new video player, access to granular analytics, and then also some new SEO features. So we're really excited about the things that have come out this last year and then all of the new technologies to look forward to this year. So we know that this is a lot to take in. Oftentimes you can look at your dashboard and wonder, what's the most important thing to have enabled right now or to look into? And so we're going to show you exactly what we want you to track and optimize yourself. Perfect. So this is our optimization checklist. So this is all of the things that we run through on a daily basis. And so you can access this from your dashboard, but these are the main tabs we're going to go over. So monetization, speed, analytics, content, and settings. So now I'll hand this off to Terrence to dive into monetization and ad tester.
Yeah, thanks for getting things started, Morgan. As Morgan mentioned, there's a lot of tools on our platform, and here on the publisher success team, we look at thousands of sites, so we always have to optimize them day in, day out. So this is sort of a guide to show you guys what we do. And the first area is monetization. So to kick things off, when it comes to optimizing a site, the most important part and aspect of making, having high EPMV and earning a lot with Ezoic is your ad placeholder setup. And we have a few rules of thumb that I want to share today, but I just want to emphasize how important this part is of ensuring an optimal Ezoic site setup. So the first thing is, how can you do it? We have a Chrome extension that's available to everybody. It's pretty easy to use, drag and drop, click drop type of tool. We also have a way to hard code in placeholders if your situation calls for it. Here in the picture, I wanted to give an example of what an optimized setup would look like. So for best practice and what we recommend to have a good variety of placeholders. That is, you can see a top of the page placeholder, under page title in the green, and under first paragraph in the blue, under second in content one, and so forth down the page. Also with sidebar top, middle, bottom, and then have link units and native ads filtered in there, here and there. The second good point is ample amount of placeholders. So Ezoic's a cool machine learning platform that tests different sizes and ad layout. So let's really use that technology. Let's put in enough placeholders to give our system the flexibility it needs to succeed. So this doesn't mean a ton of ads are going to show. We have tools to lower ads and restrict ads based off what your preferences are. But let's first making sure your placeholder setup is really using the machine learning best practices, and that's having minimal spacing between placeholders, as you can see here, and have them throughout the entire page and on all pages. The second part, or the third part, is location of placeholders, and this is really important. So, for example, you want to put a top of page placeholder in the top of the page. You don't want to label it bottom of page. You don't want to put a sidebar placeholder on top of the page. Having the labels there are for a reason, and the reason is our machine learning is going to use historical data from past examples to kickstart the optimization so it starts working faster. So that's why the labels are really important and the location matters. Another important point is order of the placeholders. So for example, in content, you want to have under first paragraph, under second paragraph, in content 1, in content 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., all the way down the page, and then you want to maintain that order across the site. This lets machine learning know exactly where the placeholder is on the page, so it lets it optimize much faster. And these are some best practices when it comes to putting on these placeholders. We definitely recommend, if you haven't already, to check out our resources on how to add placeholders using the Chrome extension, as it's extremely important for a successful site. And quickly to go over a few of the settings, adaptive sizing is automatically turned on when you add a placeholder, but on average we see this can upload EPMB about 23%, and that's comparing a site with no adaptive sizing to sites with all placeholders having adaptive sizing on. Same thing with blue sizing, so definitely recommend to turn on. These are two quick settings you can just flip on, they're automatically turned on. When it comes to the sizes, we recommend just leaving the default sizes that the system selects when you add placeholders. These sizes are based off of what we see works best and works the most efficient. You can't add more sizes, then that's up to you, but note that if you want a faster optimization period, stick with the recommended. But if you really want to earn for the long run, you can enable more sizes, but be patient with the system. Now moving on to the next thing we check, and that is the ad tester settings. So within ad tester on your dashboard, there's lots of settings, and it's hard to really know which ones work the best. So the numbers here are based off of the averages, so please keep that in mind. And this is what we see on average when enabling the settings. The first one is anchor ads. If you have this turned on all devices, it should be about an EPMB uplift of 60% compared to a site that doesn't have any anchor ads turned on. AI placeholders can uplift EPMB on average of 20%, and currently this is only for mobile, so definitely have that on. Sticky sidebar placeholder can have an uplift of 10%, but do know there's a two-step process to sticky sidebar. The first step is to ensure you have a sticky sidebar placeholder on your site and have the setting turned on. So both need to be implemented for that to work. If your sidebar is already a floating sidebar by how the theme works, then instead you would just want to use a sidebar bottom, and that will get the same result. Native ads. This on average can increase EPV by up to 10%. These are the sort of placeholders that you see, hey, sponsored content here on the web, and you click a link, it's really clickbaity. Those are generally good for revenue sometimes, but of course every site is different. But these are just best practices and what we recommend for the perfect optimal setup. And then we have some more advanced settings that came out recently, and that is in-image ads, vignette ads, interstitial ads, and totally combined, we see these increase EPV by up to 10%. I will let you know a secret, vignette ads usually perform the best out of all three. So if you want to experiment with any of them, I would recommend the vignette first. Those you'll see the best results for. So these are the ad tester settings that we recommend to have on as they give the most return without harming the UX. The next section when it comes to optimization is ads.txt. And ads.txt is very important because it allows advertisers to bid on your site. And recently, some advertisers require it for your site. The reason for this is they want to verify that, the ads are showing what they want to show and only on sites that are approved. So a good example of this is January of this year, Amazon started requiring this on all sites it bidded on. So if you didn't have an ads.txt file on January 1st, all Amazon bids are just going to stop all of a sudden. So what that means is advertisers can start requiring this, more so in the future. And then over time, if you have a perfect setup and your EPMV dwindles over time, It could be because you don't have an ads.txt set up or it's not up to date. You can view your ads.txt file by going to your home domain and typing in /ads.txt, and this will show you if your ads.txt file's there, if it's up to date. If you're on Ezoic, you would see an Ezoic entry at the top. We use that to help publishers see that it's our file. If you're using ads.txt through ads.txt manager, Ezoic will automatically keep this file up to date for you. So making sure you have that set up and you won't have to worry about it. It's a one-time setup. It should take about 5 minutes. We have extensive guides on how to do it. You want to authorize Ezoic and AdSense as recommended, then also any other partners that you have on your site bidding. And all this can be done through the ads.txt manager account. So ads.txt is very important to have on, and definitely check your site to see if you have it on or not. And the next area of optimization is AdSense mediation. So mediation is a quick and easy way to do a small optimization on your site. It's usually a two-part process. The first part is link your AdSense with Ezoic. That doesn't turn on mediation. But once you have AdSense linked and you follow the instructions in the email, then you want to go down to the mediation app, click enable, click AdSense mediation, and then add AdSense as a network. And then you just want to confirm your information there. It has a two-step process because the first part is linking Ezoic, and the second part is verifying us to create units via mediation and have it included in that bidding process. The reason why this is a helpful tool is because AdSense has a different type of bidding bidding types compared to what we use naturally, which is ads.txt and some header bidders. So normally those are on an impression-based bidding system, so CPM, while AdSense historically uses a more CPC or click-based bidding system. So adding extra diversity can help earnings. And even if you see 0 mediation revenue, it doesn't mean it's not working. Instead, it could just mean it's increasing the competition and causing the other existing bids to up their price a little bit. So AdSense mediation is another quick and easy optimization. And then wrapping up the optimization settings we have, or the monetization settings, we have optimization settings. And this gives you guys really easy controls to adjust the machine learning however you want. We highlighted balanced here because this is what we believe really works the best for long-term optimization. You want to include revenue and UX equally. You don't want to lean too much towards one or the other because things can start to happen, but we do give you the controls to play around with it. So quickly, balanced is great for having a site on and monetized for years. It's long-term. Over time, EPMV should slowly increase. Revenue is good for long-term revenue, but can have a poor effect on UX. So that benefit you're getting from the revenue focus can actually cause some adverse effects in terms of, hey, maybe your bounce rate increases a little bit. Hey, maybe your page views per visit go down a little bit. And those things can affect long-term optimization. User experience focused is great if you only care about long-term and revenue isn't that big of a deal for you. Then you can use a more conservative approach and switch to user experience focused and have those UX metrics be optimized much more than the revenue metrics. Also, we allow a custom setting, and this allows you to do custom weights to the machine learning, but I would recommend to use this with caution because things can go wrong here. For example, if you put 100% of the weight on UX and you put 100% of the weight on return visitor rate for the metric to optimize for, that's probably not going to be the best optimization for our setup. So definitely use that with caution. Look, see how your users behave, and then if you understand what revenue metrics to optimize for, you can adjust that and then observe the data afterwards. And now I'm going to pass it back to Morgan, and she's going to go in depth on why integration method matters and how it can help with your earnings.
Thanks, Terrence. Yeah, so integration methods are definitely one of the first things that I look at when I am reviewing sites. So this is going to be really foundational in terms of what type of access to technologies you're going to have on the platform, your ability to use different settings on the platform, and then also analytics as well. And so we do have 3 different options. I would make sure that you're well versed with which one you have. But the first is name servers, and then Cloudflare, and then WordPress plugin. So the first two, name servers and Cloudflare, are basically a DNS level connection with the site. The first is you point to our name servers, we host a copy of your DNS records, and then we connect as a proxy that way. And then Cloudflare is very similar, except that you would just have an existing Cloudflare account, and then you input your credentials into Ezoic, and due to our partnership with Cloudflare, we're able to connect the site that way. And then the last is the really simple plugin that you could, download whenever you'd like. But we do definitely recommend the top two, just because of the access to technology that you get at that level. And so just to give you a quick overview, here is one example of a publisher that I convinced to switch from WordPress plugin to, I think it was Cloudflare integration in this instance. And all of his metrics improved right after that, including EPMD, visits, UX metrics, and page RPM. And so that's just because of the connection at the DNS level. There is one less plugin, one less additional hop, and we're really just able to optimize the site better at that level. So as you can see by now, we do recommend this as opposed to the WordPress plugin. It is what most of our publishers are running on, so large majority already have those top two that I mentioned before. And this is because of the access or the ability to improve page load time. So with those two, you have improved time to first byte and time to interactive. Time to interactive, or TTI, noted here, is essentially the amount of time it takes for a user to access your content and begin interacting with the page. And so this is really important for UX and is a direct correlation in terms of SEO and what Google looks at, because of course it means that a better TTI means that the user is accessing the page faster and getting to what they came for. And so that'll be specifically improved with that integration. And then also just overall access to our caching and HTML caching. So you'll notice within the speed tab of your dashboard, there's the caching app, but that will only be available if you are integrated at the DNS level. And so we will provide that additional layer of caching that oftentimes your hosts and plugins cannot offer at the HTML level. So we do see that our caching provides much better results. And then lastly, at name server Cloudflare integration, you have access to additional site speed accelerator features, and then overall better reporting in big data analytics, just more granular and more correct. And so here's one other example of a publisher that switched from WordPress plugin to name servers, which is like the same thing, but he had a very good improvement in time to interactive by about 2 seconds. So really good stuff there. So that leads us into our site speed portion. All right, so going more into caching, the first thing to do to make sure that this is set up properly on your site is just to go to the site speed tab and make sure that the caching app is turned on. Most publishers have this on by default, but maybe along the road you've turned it off for a specific reason. So just go back and check and make sure that it's on if it makes sense for your site and you'd like to take advantage of this. And then oftentimes it is on for most publishers, but in order to actually make sure that it's working properly, we suggest going into Big Data Analytics and scrolling to the Site Speed tab to view some of the metrics. And so once you get there, you'll notice 3 different categories: cache hit, cache miss, and cache off. So cache hit means that our CDN is working properly, caching the page, and displaying that stored page to a certain amount of users. And so ideally, we want to have more cache hits than misses or offs, because that means the user is accessing a faster page. And a cache miss or cache off is pretty frequent or common to see. It just means that our caching wasn't actually able to display the stored page for whatever reason. Something in the headers, the cache headers was blocking us, or something along those lines. But when looking at these metrics, just kind of make sure that cache hits are greater than cache misses. So if you do see the opposite, where cache misses are way higher or offs, or most of the time what you're seeing in the metrics, then we do advise next going back to the caching app and tweaking some of those settings. So I'll link there are some helpful resource articles linked here to actually optimize this further. But within the caching app, the two main things that I recommend adjusting would be changing the override cache control headers portion to true. And what this will do is whatever is blocking our CDN or resulting in those cache misses will then allow us to override that. So we'll basically override that and actually start caching the content a bit stronger than before. And so that's one option to get those cache hits up. And then another would be to increase the default cache age. So right now it's that very top one on the list. And so right now it's set to cache once a day by default for all of our publishers. But let's say you have evergreen content, or you only update like once a week or less than that, then you can definitely increase your cache age to be once every 3 days, once a week, something along those lines. And what that'll do is just mean that we can store the page for longer, which will increase the likelihood of users accessing a cache hit. So that could help with that and overall averages for site speed. And then finally, there is this helpful redirect path extension that I personally always use when checking the cache headers and seeing if there's something blocking us. And so you're welcome to download that if you ever need to troubleshoot further and kind of look at things through our eyes as well. And then lastly, within that site speed tab is our site speed accelerator, which has been live for over a year now. But we do have a paid version and then a free version of this. And so the paid version is denoted as Site Speed Plus, and a lot of those additional settings are really helpful settings that are going to delay scripts on your page, delay ads, help optimize images, lazy load other scripts. And so this is really something that someone might go out and hire a developer to do, or pay a hefty fee for a plugin or something like that. And we essentially can do the exact same thing, but all through Ezoic and also through a paid subscription service. But you're welcome to try the free trial for that. But we do have free settings that, if you decide the paid version isn't for you, that's totally fine. But we do have a lot of additional settings that you might as well enable since they're free. And so that includes cleaning up some CSS, optimizing fonts, minifying HTML, things like that. And so in order to access that, you could always just step one, create a version, preview that version on the site, make sure everything's working well, and then go ahead and activate, and you'll have access to those site speed accelerator settings. Perfect. So now we're going to go over some bonus checks, just some extra things that we always look at as well.
Thanks for going over all the integration methods, Morgan. Super helpful, and I can't emphasize enough on the caching settings. There can be some big increases in page RPM having cache hits on compared to off. So definitely check that on your setup. So now going into some bonus checks, some things that we check on a daily basis. The first one's kind of a small check, but it's what are the current traffic settings on the site. Ezoic is a really cool and interesting platform that allows you to select what percentage of traffic you want to flow through our system or on your original setup. So you can compare a platform to one another, you can test and see what works best for you. But in the case that Ezoic is outperforming and it's winning, you want to check your traffic settings here. So by default, when you turn on Ezoic, it gets set to 90%. And this means that 90% of traffic goes to Ezoic, 10% is going to your original setup, whatever that is. So in the case that is, let's say Ezoic is winning by 50%, Ezoic has a $10 EPMB and your original setup is a $5 EPMB. If you left this on 90%, you're essentially losing out on about 5% overall EPMB. So switching that setting could be an optimization and increase your overall earnings. There is a ramp up period for Ezoic, so that's why we recommend having it on 90% in the first place. We like to see some of that original data flow through, so you have a good sample size on making your decision. But once your site is set up and it's been running on us for over a year, then definitely make sure it's on 100%, especially if you're adding a brand new secondary site. You can just turn it to 100% right away. So this is a quick and easy thing to check. Just know if Ezoic is winning, make sure it's at 100%. Or if you still want to test, you can bump it down to 99% on each device so you can still see some of that original data. The next quick and easy thing that we check is this new thing called sellers.json. And this is a little bit similar to ads.txt in the relationship between publisher and advertiser. And this can be found under your monetization tab in your Ezoic dashboard. Basically, what this does is it allows for an advertiser to see the endpoint of where their ads end up. So if I'm Nike, for example, and I set a campaign for 1 million impressions and I have some set CPM, I'm going to go make that order at Google's ad exchange. Google's ad exchange is going to take it in, and then they're going to distribute it however they do through their network. And the reason why sellers.json is interesting is because that supply chain from ad to user or see on your site is a very complex process, and a lot of things happen in between. So seeing the endpoint for an advertiser really can help them with their bidding confidence. And if they're more confident in bidding on a site, chances are they're probably going to increase their bid if they know they can win it. So having something filled in for sellers.json is best practices at the moment. And we make this easy for you where you can put something in the field in your Ezoic dashboard, or you can decide to hide your seller's information. And you can fill it in with whatever you feel comfortable with, whether that be your name, your domain name, your business name, the name of your site without the .com, just whatever you're comfortable with. Do know this is, will be seen as seller information by an advertiser, so do keep that in mind. But it's best practices to have this at least filled in, and it's super easy to do. It takes like 2 seconds, and it could easily improve your EPMB. Now moving on to another quick check, and that is ad restrictions. So with Ezoic, we like to give publishers full control over, limiting ads, not showing ads on certain pages, optimization settings, as I said earlier. But some of these can have an adverse effect, and it might not be straightforward. A good example of this is max ads per page app. This, no matter what turned on, and you have a restriction in place, will lower your ad revenue and EPMB. But if it's something you really want, you're going to have to weigh those pros and cons on your own. But for example, let's say you turn on the setting and then you forget about it 1 month down the line, and then you check in the future and you say, hey, why is the setting on? And you don't remember your reason, then you can turn this on, and it's a quick win. Of course, if you have advice on this, you can contact us. But do know our system already takes into consideration page length, proper ratio of content to ads, word count to ads, and those are things our machine learning is doing. So that is being utilized. We do recommend, a more conservative approach at first is, instead of turning a max ads per page, first try with another setting that won't have such an adverse effects, such as optimization settings, put more emphasis on user experience metrics, and that might not lower your revenue as much, but you might get the same outcome in terms of user experience. And the next ad restriction is called ad categories, and this allows you to have full control over what advertisers show on your site. So, then that breaks down the categories: dating, drugs, casinos, politics, religion, download utilities, et cetera, et cetera. So in some cases, for example, let's say you see a political ad on your site and you don't want political ads. So then you go in and you switch the setting to off. But let's say, for example, in the US, we just had a big election, and that was back in November. So if you had political ads turned off, you might have missed out on a lot of revenue for US-based traffic. So there are some elements at play when you turn these off. It's best to leave as many on as you're comfortable with, because more settings means more flexibility for the system, means better optimization. Another easier or better solution we like to suggest is, instead of blocking a whole category of advertisers, instead block a specific advertiser that you don't like. So let's say, for example, you see an ad on your page you really don't like, and you say, hey, I'm going to block this whole category because I saw it. Well, how about instead you get the URL of the advertiser, and you put it into the setting that we have called advertiser blocker, and that will block just that particular advertiser. So instead of blocking the whole pool of the category, you're just blocking one single advertiser. And that has almost zero effect on your overall earnings, unless it's a really big advertiser like Google. Don't do that. But it's a lot better than blocking for an ad category. And moving on to some more restriction settings, disable ads per page. This blocks Ezoic ads from showing on pages. And it's really more than just disabling ads by page. It's more like disable ads by page, by directory, disable a certain placeholder by a page or directory, excluding a specific AI placeholders by page or directory. You kind of have a lot of full control over this. And it could be very handy if you need to have certain ad spots taken away for like affiliate pages, or if you have certain URL strings you don't want ads to show. It can be really helpful. But things can change. Let's say, for example, you had one rule, a year ago, but then fast forward to today, and your site has changed a lot. That rule may not still be applicable. So you might want to go and review your rules and see if they're still relative, because you could be missing out on some revenue by an old rule that's just sitting there. A big mistake I've seen with this is people add a rule for a directory and they use a / and it would block a particular ad or ads from the entire domain. So definitely check out these rules and make sure they're up to date and consistent. Excluded pages app is the same thing, except instead of blocking ads, it blocks all Ezoic apps from running on the site. So that will include caching, site speed, SEO products, video, etc. So making sure you review your restrictions and see if you need to make any changes to them. And then I'm going to pass back to Morgan, and she's going to go over the last few bonus checks for you guys.
Cool, thanks, Terrence. So objectionable content is another really important thing to keep an eye on in your account. You can find this under the content tab and then scroll all the way to the bottom. And so what this is essentially a report that shows you what our filter is picking up in terms of possible objectionable words on your content, on your pages. And what this means is these are words that Google would typically not like their ads to be on. So pages that have, let's say, pharmacy, for instance, Google does not want you to place Google ads on pages that contain certain words. And if you do and they find out, they will possibly put bans or violations on your Google AdX accounts and essentially demonetize you in a more harsh way in the long run. And so what we do is we offer this filter and this report to go ahead and tackle them ahead of time before Google ever finds out. And so what we do is, if we detect these words on your various pages, we will block ads from showing on that page to protect your accounts from Google. And essentially, like, this will happen pretty often with medical sites or the news sites, anything in a niche like that, where you're possibly pumping out a lot of articles that contain words like this based on what's popular in the news, or even medical terms that you wouldn't necessarily be using in a bad context. You're using them in a medical context, but Google still doesn't know the difference, and they can still get upset about monetizing pages like that. And so what you do is you should essentially check this whenever you can and amend the page if you can. And obviously, if it's like medical related or pharmacy related, you can't really change those words, and you just have to be okay with the content not having ads. But if there are actual bad words and you could, change it to be a cleaner article, then we definitely recommend that, because then you can monetize it. So you can filter this report by top hits. That just means certain pages are getting more traffic than others, which would mean that you should spend most of your time on the higher traffic pages compared to lower traffic might not matter as much. And so this can also happen if you have a unregulated comment section or forum where users are engaging and possibly using bad words. That can affect the entire page from being monetized. And then also if you use a word like this in the title of an article, and let's say that title of the article is on related posts for other pages or on the home page, then all of the pages that contain that title could be affected as well. So this is also something important to look at if you ever have a decrease in EPMB and you're trying to figure out what happened. This is really my go-to for checking that. And then just some words again that might pop up. Pharmacy, Nazi, marijuana, those are all words that you might not think would be demonetized, but they are according to Google policy. Perfect. So going along with some big data analytics reports that we look at often, some go-tos that I would suggest just keeping an eye on, especially if you have disabled ads on certain pages or the objectionable content issues, then this report is called Pages Without Revenue, and I would suggest keeping an eye on it if you can. So what this will do is just show you pages that aren't earning, and you can filter it by page views. And I would say if there is a page that has a lot of page views, let's say over a couple hundred for a given week, and it's not being monetized for whatever reason, whether you blocked ads on it manually or it does have an objectionable word, something like that, then I would recommend looking into it and seeing if you can amend that or change a setting, because it does just mean that you'll have the potential to make revenue on that page. And then another go-to report right above that in the content tab under big data analytics would be landing pages. So we look at this often when we are doing a placeholder setup or placeholder optimization, because there is a really helpful EPMB column, and you may not notice it at first because it's all the way on the right. So go ahead and view this report and pull the EPMB tab over so you can view that column along with page views. And what you can gather from this report is essentially what top landing pages are doing in terms of EPMB. What I usually look for is to see if there's a top landing page that has a way lower EPMB compared to the others. And so that would indicate to me either one, users aren't really engaging well with this page, or maybe it's a top landing page, but they aren't continuing on in the session to other page views. And so that could be a reason for a small EPMB. And then also just the placeholder setup on that page. Maybe for whatever reason doesn't have enough placeholders, so isn't being monetized as well as some other pages. Things like that. Maybe that article went viral on social media and there was a little bit less engagement, things like that. But what this can help you with is, again, just checking that placeholder setup on those pages, but also seeing which pages are performing really well and using that to further your content production and strategy moving forward. So obviously if something has really high EPMB, you know that it's something that users like and advertisers are bidding really highly on. And then next, another go-to report is the framework report. So this is in the technology tab, and basically it's just a full breakdown of the different devices and your traffic breakdown on all of those. So most people do tend to have more mobile web, depending on the niche, but you can see that mobile web typically has a lower EPMV than desktop. That's totally normal, but the way I use this report is just to see if, okay, if mobile is way lower, what can we do on mobile to improve that EPMV? Or vice versa. It might just mean that you need a little bit more placeholders, or maybe you want to adjust the layout on that device or something like that for users. And then one thing that also comes up when I check this is whether or not you're running an AMP framework, which is totally fine and good for traffic, but it does monetize less in terms of EPMB compared to mobile. So this is something that I just keep an eye on, and just make sure that AMP setup is good to go if you have it. All right, that was a lot of good information and a lot of our go-to checks that we always look at. So now we're just going to go into our Q&A session, and you guys are welcome to add your questions to the Q&A box, and we will do our best to address them.
Yeah, there's already a few questions coming in, but feel free to add some more down below. If you do have a site-specific one, we probably won't get to it because it's hard for us to see your exact circumstances of your site. And quickly, last word on the overall webinar is this is an optimization review type webinar. So implementing these best practices will mean your setup is running well. But hey, if your EPMB is still not satisfactory, it could be niche related, it could be traffic related. Let's say, for example, you get all your traffic on mobile instead of desktop. These are other factors that can play into it as well.
Cool. All right. So I will start with one of the questions in the chat box, and then Terrence, I'll let you go to the Q&A after. So one of the questions in the chat box is pretty site specific, but I'll go into some things that I see in terms of caching. So it is possible that sometimes our caching may not work perfectly with your site. It might be because there is cookies being sent from your cache headers. Again, that's something that you can see with that extension, which I'll link that Chrome extension after this in our slides so you could troubleshoot yourself. But essentially there can be cookies sent from your cache headers that are going to block our caching no matter what. And so sometimes this can happen if you are, let's say, a news site and you're constantly needing to update your cache. And so you send these cookies that upon every revision or update to a page, you need to constantly update the cache. That's something that Ezoic won't be able to cache and won't be able to pick up on. And so a publisher like that would have to stick with their typical caching setup and just have to forego some of the Ezoic ones, which is fine too. It's better to have a good caching setup than none. So even if you can't fully use Ezoic, that's okay. That is a rare situation, so something that we'll want to work with you one-on-one on. But it is possible that sometimes there is just something in the headers or in the host configuration that doesn't give an optimal amount of hits.
Yep. So we have quite a few questions coming here, so we're going to try our best to get to as many as we can. First question is, someone was referencing to the newer ad features of in-image, vignette, and interstitial ads. They said, why not just turn them all on at once? I'm going to say a note here on this question. These are still kind of experimental, and the reason for that is right now those units don't incorporate some of our machine learning. So I would recommend turn them on and monitor your performance. Look at UX metrics, look at revenue, and see how they perform. We just released them, and we're going to implement a ton of extra features in the back end to help increase earnings for those. So for those new features of in-image, vignette, and interstitial, try them and see how they work for your site. I guess this is going to sort of encapsulate two questions in once. One is regarding to mediation and adding more networks, and the other one is, do I need an AdSense account? So mediation works not just with AdSense, it also works with other header bidder partners. So for example, if you have an account with media.net, you can add media.net as a header bidder. And when you add it into header bidder, it sends it off to our RevOps team, and we set up everything on the back end for you. And then that other ad network can start competing with the existing demand on Ezoic. So it doesn't hurt to add more partners to header bidding. It can help. In some cases, some partners perform really well on some sites, but most of the time, Google Ad Exchange outperforms a lot of other partners. So keep in mind, your expectations when you add new partners is not going to be a massive increase. Google Ad Exchange, which is already running with Ezoic, is going to be winning a majority of the bids. And then the same point on AdSense, if you want to use AdSense mediation, you will need an AdSense account, but do understand it can be a little help. Sometimes it might be really helpful. Sometimes it might just be a small change because how dominant Google Ad Exchange is when it comes to the bidding process that we see on sites. But it doesn't hurt if you're willing to start an account with AdSense or with another partner. Definitely add it to mediation, and it helps the overall diversity of your revenue instead of it just coming through a few partners and our header bidders. Adding more doesn't hurt.
I will address the next question. So if I use Cloudflare to cache static assets such as images, will that affect cache miss versus cache hit numbers in big data analytics? So no, it shouldn't. Everything that's being cached at the Cloudflare level is good to go, and we still recommend that. Where Ezoic sits is in front of Cloudflare. So everything that's being cached at Cloudflare will then come to Ezoic, and then Ezoic will add an additional layer. So it's good to actually have two CDNs kind of in conjunction in terms of the lineup of caching. So totally fine to still have Cloudflare do everything that it's doing right now.
Yeah. And quickly, I want to do note on the cache hit versus miss. This is a great way to compare caching products. So, for example, when you run the report under site speed, caching, Ezoic caching, and that shows cache hits versus misses, if you're not using our caching and it shows cache off, that's your existing setup, and you can see how well your existing cache is running. So if someone asks me, hey, should I use Ezoic caching? My answer is give it a try, see how time the first byte, see how timed interactive, see how your page RPM improves when you turn it on and it's running correctly. Same thing with the cache miss. If you're running a ton of AMP pages on your site, those pages are actually being cached by Google. That's how AMP works. So those won't show up as a cache hit in that report. So AMP pages, they're already extremely fast. You don't have to worry about the speed on them, but you will see the difference in page RPM and revenue. So I guess I'll answer, since I sort of hinted on AMP pages. Someone asked, how can you optimize your AMP pages for EPMD? So AMP pages will require an additional setup with our placeholders. So what I mean by this is when you add a placeholder to a site, if you're on your desktop, you can select if you want it on what devices, desktop, tablet, and mobile. And that would work for your regular mobile, your regular tablet. But if you want to add placeholders on your AMP pages, you need to be able to open the developer tools in your Chrome browser or whatever browser you're using and view the site in a mobile version of it. So iPhone 5, iPhone 6, etc. And then refresh the page so it loads. And then for AMP, some AMP pages have a specific URL like /AMP or /?AMP. Whatever yours is for your AMP pages, go to an AMP page, and then you need to turn on the Chrome extension, and that will allow you to add placeholders on your AMP pages. And you would do the same best practices we use for regular mobile for AMP pages, but do note there's going to be a limit to how much AMP pages can earn.
Cool. Trying to figure out which one to answer next.
Yeah, let me see.
I'll do this one. The Chrome extension only ever shows a few ads. How can I see if the other ads are actually showing to users? can I see how much each ad type is earning? So we do have access to that report if you are in our premium program. In the big data analytics area, there's a yield tab. We do show ad level reporting there. However, we always say take it with a grain of salt if you're looking at those reports, just because in terms of looking at specific ad level data, you might want to go, you might think to yourself, oh, let me go in and I'll start deleting all the ones that aren't performing as well, or maybe the ones that are towards the bottom of the page I'll start deleting. But we definitely recommend just kind of looking at the data for your own knowledge, but not making really changes according to that data, because the machine learning is already taking into consideration all of those data points. They'll show one ad on a certain page because it's longer and that placeholder is towards the bottom of the page. But on another page, they may not show it at all because that other page is much shorter and doesn't accommodate a placeholder on the 10th paragraph, for instance. So, you might think, oh, I should delete that placeholder on the 10th paragraph. But we recommend just always enabling as many placeholders as you can, as many sizes as you can, and then letting the system take it from there in terms of optimizations, because oftentimes the machines are way better than what we could ever do.
Yeah. I guess the next question I'm going to answer is, someone says, this is kind of site specific, but I've cache misses higher than cache hits. Same time I checked, I have all three of those settings recommended. What I would do is see if you have, of course, I don't know your site specific, but when it comes to caching and troubleshooting, download that extension tip that we gave you. It's called the redirect path. It's a Chrome extension that lets you see the headers when you view your site. So if you have that extension installed, you go to your site, and then you click on the extension. It's going to show you if the Ezoic cache hits or misses based off of the page load. That's what we would recommend to check out. And then, of course, increase your cache age. For the general rule of thumb for cache ages, a smaller site, even with a longer time, bigger site, even a shorter time. So let's say, roughly speaking, you get 10,000 monthly page views. That's kind of on the smaller end. You would want probably a cache age of 1 week there, because you want to making sure you have enough time where each page gets a cache hit for multiple locations around the world where your users are coming from. And if you have a much bigger site, then you can reduce that time. For example, I started a small blog and I put my cache age to 1 month because that would work best for a brand new blog.
Okay. I will answer if there's one asking about kind of the difference between our caching versus WP Rocket, and also kind of the difference in mobile scores compared to mobile scores with ads and page speed insights, and then pages without ads. So first of all, we actually are, in terms of our best practices, again, what Terrence said, we advise you to look at what the page speeds, time to interactives are with that existing caching, so WP Rocket, and then also it's worth turning that off and then comparing our caching alongside that, and seeing which one performs better for the site. And then on top of that, there is a lot of settings in WP Rocket that we also do offer in our Site Speed Accelerator. So again, I would compare the Ezoic caching, full caching, Site Speed Accelerator product, both of those products together, and compare that to how WP Rocket and whatever did for you before, and then see how your scores and how your time to interactives line up with that. What we see is that using Ezoic, all of our speed tools, is actually provides a better outcome in terms of all those scores compared to anything else. But worth testing on your site, your individual site.
Yeah. So we're kind of running a little short on time here. We all are going to save a review of this webinar so you can view later, and we'll send that to you guys and how to find it, same with the slides. We do thank everyone for joining on and hope you learned something about how to optimize your site on our platform. We know there's a lot of tools, but hopefully this is a nice guide to say, hey, these are the things I should check. And if they're enabled, I'm probably going to have great performance on this platform. This is sort of, our secret, not a secret, but what we do on a daily basis and how we optimize sites. So again, we thank you guys for joining. We hope you learned something, and we'll catch you guys on another webinar.
Yeah, we will definitely follow up with the recording of this, as Terrence said, and I think I'll probably get some of these questions and the ones that we weren't able to get to as well, and answer those for you guys. So yeah, stay tuned for our follow-up thank you email. And thank you all for joining today, and we appreciate your time and hope you learned a lot.
See you guys.
See you guys.